that now make any connections? Do you think of anything that we do? Like, what? Chapter 8 of Proverbs, where wisdom says, I was there with the Lord, I was his helper, I was his firstborn. Literally, she says that. I was his firstborn. So Paul here is using wisdom language. Wisdom that was, language that was already used of wisdom back in Proverbs 8 to speak about Christ. So next time, if there's ever a next time, if I teach this again, I'm going to tell them, don't do that question until the next lesson. Because I'm sure you struggled with it. Because there wasn't anything, obviously there's nothing in that first lesson in the work that would have made the connection so obvious. As obvious as I'm sure it is now. Yes, boys and girls? Yes. Huh? Oh, busted for not reading the footnotes. Ann, you're going to be beat up during recess. Ann got it right. Teacher's pet. All right, are we ready to move on? Yep. Record? So, we are coming to the last of the lesson. We're finally getting to the meat. We have been looking at the wrapper of the sandwich, and then maybe the outer crust of the sandwich, and now we get the meat. That is, in the sayings of Proverbs, we're going to be grappling with them. Now, the worst way to read Proverbs is what we're going to do here. Just read them, one after another. They're meant to be like you read one, and you kind of chew on it, and think about it. Because again, it's not like a story. They very rarely are telling stories. They're giving you a very concise statement of an apparent truth. And you have to kind of like a nut, or like you got to open it up to get, you got to shell the fruit to get to the part you want to eat. So, Proverbs is best, like read one a day, or a couple maybe, and then chew on them and then pray about them. But we're going to read a whole slug of them, okay? So you know now what to do. Chapter 10. The first collection here, where's my Mickey hand? First collection is Proverbs of Solomon, and it's 11 chapters, or 12 chapters. It's mainly two-line Proverbs. So let's start with chapter 10. A wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son is a sorrow to his mother. Now, again, that doesn't yet teach you wisdom. It just tells you the consequences of being wise or not being wise. Children who are raised with wisdom, who gain it, are going to, because they bring success and wealth, are going to be, and not embarrass their parents, are going to be a joy. 2, treasures gained by wickedness do not profit, but righteousness delivers from death. What do you think of, what does that mean? Treasures gained by wickedness do not profit, but righteousness delivers from death. Any idea? I mean, again, how is that the case? The first part, treasures gained by wickedness do not profit. Stealing. Why doesn't it seem to profit for some people, huh? Gordy, what's his name? The guy in prison, Bernie Madoff. Okay, he made oodles of money. Of course, he's in prison now, isn't he? Yeah. He's dead. Better, worse than that. So the idea is the law of retribution. If you get wealthy by stealing, there will be a comeuppance. Okay, so you get to kind of open it up. What is the proverb saying? But righteousness delivers from death. Now, again, I keep making the point, most of the Old Testament, they didn't really have a belief in the next life. So this reference is not to eternal life. It's just that you won't pull a Bernie Madoff. You will not be, the law of retribution will not come gunning for you because you live in righteousness. 3, the Lord does not let the righteous go hungry, but he thwarts the craving of the wicked. think that's true? I don't. I mean, it's a bold statement to urge you to be righteous, and then people will maybe see your righteousness and repay you, or the great karmic wheel will make you righteous. There's a Psalm 37, or is it Psalm 73? I think it's 37, which makes this argument saying, you know, I've seen the rich go rich, and that just bugged me to pieces. Okay?
But then mechanical.
Huh?
But then in, you know, or in the Magnificat where the...
If you believe that. I mean, I'm just saying.
You know, we've dealt with a lot of rich people, and, you know, he said he sent the rich away empty.
But that's a promise. That's not the reality. He's not saying that's the case. Wisdom is saying that's the case. Is it the case that the Lord does not let the righteous go hungry? Well, not on the physical level. I question that. But you can make it spiritual. Well, you know, again, as Christians, we can make it, you know, there's going to be a hereafter, a reward. Again, don't be afraid to question the wise voice here. Okay? 4, a slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. Slack hand. What's a slack hand? Lazy. The lazy person doesn't get a crop, doesn't build a building, doesn't do anything. So it's like early to bed, early to rise, makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. Similarly, verse 5, a son who gathers in summer is prudent, but a son who sleeps in harvest brings shame. Again, it's the grasshopper and the ant. Look it up. Not in the Bible, but look it up. Huh? The grasshopper and the ant. That is, you have to make hay while the sun shines. You have to work during the season of growth. Because if you don't do it then, you're going to starve. Verse 12. Chapter 10, verse 12. Hatred stirs up strife. Love covers all offenses. I point that out to you because you've heard it before. It's in the first letter of Peter. Love covers a multitude of sins. That's how you were taught it by your mother or cat. Love covers a multitude of sins. Well, here it is. Love covers all offenses. Verse 12. Verse 26. I'm picking ones that I like. That's how you think. What's he picking? 26. Like vinegar to the teeth, smoke to the eye, is the sluggard to those who send him. What's that about?
The lazy employee is annoying to the boss.
Yes. Oh, but they're talking about messengers here in particular. Send him. So you gotta say, so my child is sick. Can you go to the doctor, or can you go to the pharmacist and get something? And the person's kind of like, I'm gonna watch TV first. I mean, you're right. Your application is apt. But the point, vinegar to the teeth, it's sharp, painful, and smoke to the eyes. It makes me cry. Is if you send as a messenger a character who is slack. Chapter 11, verse 1. A false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. Now notice, this is a theme about justice. This is a prophetic proverb. Huh? It's saying don't cheat. Don't cheat. A false balance, that is a measure, to measure all things were bought by weight, or measured by weight, and paid for by weight. Even money was weighed out. So to cheat is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. Next verse. When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with the humble is a wisdom. Where's that from? Where have you heard that before? When pride comes, then goes disgrace. Pride goeth before a fall. You have heard these things, or seen them, or read them, or somebody has commented them to you. So you see where Proverbs has been the kind of the treasury of sayings for educating the next generation of people, young people, workers, statesmen. Verse 14. Anybody who gets this, I will get my fancy pointer. I know that you'll all be fighting for that. Who made this famous? Where there is no guidance, a people fails, but in an abundance of counselors, there is safety. You won't remember it. Some of you aren't old enough. Bill Clinton, when he was before the Republic or Democratic convention, before he was nominated, he gave a very good speech, and the theme of it was if there is no wisdom, the people falters. That was the theme over and over again in his speech. If there is no wisdom, the people falters. If there is no wisdom, the people falter. So he made this famous. That's Bill Clinton, 1988 or 92 or something. That's why I could say, I'd give this to you because I knew you wouldn't get it. So, verse 22. Like a gold ring in a swine's snout is a beautiful woman without discretion. Take that apart. What's it saying? Exactly. Who would put a gold ring in a pig's snout? They don't belong together. It's incongruous. In the same fashion, a beautiful woman who can't make good choices, they don't belong together. Okay? If you think about it, there's when you like one, then kind of go at it. Verse 24. One man gives freely, yet grows all the richer. Another withholds what he should give and only suffers want. What is the proverb encouraging us to do? Be generous, because if you're generous, you'll be rewarded. Jesus put it this way: to those who have, more will be given, and those who have not, the little they have will be taken away. Okay? So these sentiments aren't unique to the Old Testament. Chapter 13, verse 3. He who guards his mouth preserves his life. He who opens wide his lips comes to ruin. When the Proverbs talks about mouth, what are they really talking about? Speech. Yes, words. So put that in. He who talks little preserves his life. He who says too much, garrulous person, comes to ruin.
Say little and hear more.
Better to say little and be thought a fool than open your mouth and take away all doubt. Okay? That's another proverb. Okay? Verse 7. One man pretends to be rich, yet has nothing. Another pretends to be poor, yet has great wealth. You got to pick at this. Get beneath the surface. One man pretends to be rich, yet has nothing. Another pretends to be poor, yet has great wealth. Don't judge a book by this. Appearances are deceiving. At least it says that, huh? Okay.
Yeah, both pretended was not good, either way.
Mm-hmm. Verse 24. This is one you know. Your parents cited it to you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
He who spares the rod doesn't say that. It says hates his son. He who loves him is diligent to discipline him. It's a paradox. Love is shown by expecting a lot of your children and holding them accountable, which no child would ever think is wise. Okay? Chapter 14, verse 31. This is another justice kind of proverb. He who oppresses a poor man insults his maker. He who is kind to the needy honors him. So 14:31. Okay, he who oppresses a poor man insults his maker. He who is kind to the needy honors him. You see, Proverbs are meaning to move us to action. not just to be quoted, but to move us to action. 15, chapter 15, verse 16. Better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble with it. Remember, Proverbs are to make our life happy and make us successful, but that does not necessarily mean wealthy. Here it says you can have a lot, but trouble comes with it. If you have a little but have proper respect of God, that makes you a wealthy man. Chapter 16. Verse 2. All the ways of a man are pure in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the spirit. All the ways of a man are pure in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the spirit. Who can help analyze that one?
Isn't that like relativism? Your truth is whatever you want it to be.
It could be that. I think it's something even more simple than that. I mean, that's fine. That we don't even know ourselves, do we? We always tend to, again, as an example, we're always quick to judge other people's behavior. But we're somehow unable to judge our own. You know, we've got 1,000 reasons for why we do something. We're late for a meeting. But let somebody else be late, and oh my gosh. You know?
Is that the beam in our eye?
Yes, the beam in our eye. Thank you.
As a teacher, former teacher, the fellow teacher who had a student in your class lost all reason when it came to discussing their child, but otherwise agreed with everything.
Okay, you're talking about experiences there.
Yes.
Wisdom has taught you that.
Experience.
Chapter 16, verse 32. He who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, the powerful, huh? You can control your anger. You are a mighty person. He who rules his spirit than he who takes a city. Remember we read Samuel when King Saul was chasing after David. And David was hiding in a cave. And King Saul came to relieve himself. And he had his chance. His partner says, "This is your chance. The Lord is delivering him into your hands." And he won't do it. That shows David's strength. He showed strength in not striking his enemy. Okay, he controlled his anger, and that proves him to be mighty. Chapter 17, verse 9. He who forgives an offense seeks love, but he who repeats a matter alienates a friend. He who forgives an offense seeks love, but he who repeats a matter alienates a friend. It's not so hard. It's just that
It is interesting the different,
translations.
different words.
Yeah, this is all poetry, so it's very difficult to render, and you'll get radically different translations.
Because here it says, he who covers up a misdeed fosters friendship, but he who gossips about it separates friends.
Now that's much easier to understand than my RSV,
Right.
but that says the text. Look at the next one. A rebuke goes deeper into a man of understanding than 100 blows into a fool. But as a sensitive person, when you give them a correction, it sticks with them. But a dolt, you can just keep wailing on them. They don't seem to understand. Verse 28. This is what I talked about earlier. Even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent. Chapter 18, verse 24. This is about friendship. The Old Testament does not, it's only the wisdom books that reflect about friendship in the Old Testament. Okay, when we get to Sirach, there's quite a couple paragraphs on friendship. But here's one line. There are friends who pretend to be friends, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. 22. Chapter 22,
After.
verse 6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Now you see, again, it captures an ideal that says if you raise your children when they're young, they will accept direction and live by it. Now, is that always the case? Hardly. But again, it's setting the ideal. This is what the wise person does. Okay? Verse 13. I like this one. The sluggard says, there is a lion outside. I shall be slain in the streets. Okay, it'll take you a while to figure that out. What's going on there? The sluggard says, there's a lion outside. I shall be slain in the streets.
Justifying inaction.
Justifying doing nothing. Because there's a need to act, but you can think of 1,000 reasons why not. There's a lion in the street. That's why I can't go to the store, Mom. Verse 14. Again, Proverbs is a male-dominated thing. So you're going to get a lot of male-female, just old, old judgments. The mouth of a loose woman is a deep pit. He with whom the Lord is angry will fall into it. Okay. So it's a reference back to the loose woman, the strange woman, and what happens if you follow her. With chapter...
They had
Yes.
to make sure the men got the point.
Maybe that's it. Well, no, but again, you saw how concerned in those first 9 chapters the authors were about young men being adulterous, chasing loose women. I mean, they really were. I mean, it is a kind of a backhanded way of saying be loyal to your spouse. Seek a good spouse and be loyal to her. Now, again, it makes women to be the fall guys or the problems, but it's the men who are the problem. But you can see how concerned the sage is about marital infidelity. Now, we're in chapter 22, verse 17. This is called the sayings of the wise. Okay, it calls it itself. It's mainly no longer 2-line proverbs, but mainly little tiny paragraphs of instruction. This is the section that has most been influenced by the sayings of Amen, whatever his name is. Amen Opie. We call him Opie. Okay? Selections from the instruction of Amen Opie. So this is the section that's most influenced by it. Okay? I came across, where is it, Mark? I can give you two. You can give you the facts. There are 24 verses in this section here. 24 verses. 15 of them have a parallel to Opie. And only 7 have no reference at all. Of the 487 verses of Opie, 41 have been drawn into this section. So it's this mini collection that's been most influenced by that earlier Egyptian collection. And again, the only thing that's really, it's in the back of the book here, is just so that you recognize, again, the universality of wisdom, that it's not just an Israelite thing. So far in our studies, almost everything is pretty uniquely Israelite. This is something that's broader. So look at verse 17. Incline your ear, hear the words of the wise, apply your mind to my knowledge, for it will be pleasant if you keep them within you. Here's how Opie starts. Give your ears, hear what is said, give your heart to understand them. To put them in your heart is worthwhile. It is damaging to the one who neglects them. So the same kind of opening exercise. Look at verse 20. I'm curious about your translations. Have I not written for you 30 sayings of admonition and knowledge? Is that what you said? What you have in your translation? Because guess how many chapters there are in Opie? 30. So the 30, the reference to 30 corresponds to this. Okay? So again, just to show the familiarity or the reference back and forth. Verse 28 of 22:28. Again, it's a justice proverb or admonition. Remove not the ancient landmark which your fathers have set. Notice, it's not parallel. It's just a statement.
Yeah.
Remove not the ancient landmark which your fathers have set. Now, that can mean two things. It means don't play with the markers that divide the fence lines. But it also refers to wisdom itself. Your ancestors taught you early to bed and early to rise. So don't mess with that. Okay? Verse 29 is a word of praise for craftspeople. Do you see a man skillful in his work? He will stand before kings. See, before a king, you're supposed to like kneel or prostrate yourself. But a craftsman, an artisan, stands before the king. Verse 23, chapter 23 is famous. We should have prayed it. We should have read it before we ate. It's about etiquette when you dine in the house of a powerful person. When you sit down to eat with a ruler, observe carefully what is before you, and put a knife to your throat if you are a man given to appetite. Okay. Verse 6, again, it's about etiquette. Do not eat the bread, related to etiquette. Do not eat the bread of a man who is stingy. Do not desire his delicacies, for he is like one who is inwardly reckoning. Eat and drink, he says to you, but his heart is not with you. So if I'm a stingy man, I invite you to my house, and you want a glass of wine, another glass of wine, and you want more dessert, I'm going to go, because I want you're eating my stuff, and I want my stuff for myself. There's a lot of repetition. Just look at 23:13. Do not withhold discipline from a child. Again, we just read that in 1918. Remember, these are individual collections. And that's why there's so much, the repetition, particularly between the different collections.
Thank you, Father. I did wonder, that seemed to be a lot of beating children.
Yes, well, again, I mean, and most of us were raised, most of us, not all of us, most of us are an age where we were raised quite strictly compared to the measure today. When we were in school, our teachers could swat us and put us in a corner and held on my ear once. I remember that. Not let go of it. And so again, there are a few things that are really, really, really worrisome to these people. One is unruly children. The other is wild women. Those are really, really matters that they just, they're scared about more than many other things. That poor people die in the streets, not so much. Okay, but beat your children and then they will follow you. Verse 24, verse 17. Do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and let not your heart be glad when he stumbles, lest the Lord see it and be displeased, and turn away his anger from him to you. It doesn't say that, but that's what he's talking about. It's the law of retribution. Don't mock or laugh your enemy when he falls, because God will take notice and say, maybe we'll touch you now in the same way. Okay? Not all of this is really, always high-minded. Sometimes it's quite selfish and personal. Then comes other sayings of a second collection, more sayings of the wise, but we're going to read one of them. Look at verse 33, which is familiar from another collection. This is, again, 24:33. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. I read it to you. It was also in chapter 6, verse 10 and 11. The second part was different, but the first part was the same. So again, repetition. Okay. Chapter 25 begins this. Proverbs of Solomon, part 2. But look at the heading. I spoke about this earlier. These also are Proverbs of Solomon, which the men of Hezekiah, king of Judah, copied. So the pulling together of the collection is credited to Hezekiah's court. But because Solomon is patron, he gets credit for all of them. Verse 6. This should sound familiar to you. Do not put yourself forward in the king's presence, or stand in the place of the great. For it is better to be told, come up here, than to be put lower in the presence of the prince. So who can tell me where they've heard that before? Jesus, thank you. Yeah, Jesus. 3 weeks ago, it was Luke 14. When you come to a banquet, take the lowest place. Maybe you will be called higher up. Okay, so again, Jesus is a teacher in the wisdom tradition, using this very sentiment in his directions. Verse 11 is just really famous. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in a setting of silver. To say the right thing at the right time is like a perfect picture where the frame reflects the inner picture. Verse 14. Like clouds and wind without rain is a man who boasts of a gift he does not give. So it's talking about all show. People who are all show, but they'll never follow through. Verse 17. Let your foot be seldom in your neighbor's house, lest he become weary of you and hate you. Okay, what's the wisdom there?
Don't go bothering people.
Don't go too many times to the same place. They're going to get tired of you. Yeah. Verse 20. He who sings songs to a heavy heart is like one who takes off a garment on a cold day and puts vinegar on a wound. So if you're depressed and sad and somebody says, don't worry, be happy, it just grinds in you. It doesn't help you at all. Verse 21 is quoted by the letter of Paul to the Romans. If your enemy is hungry, give him bread to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink. For you will heap coals of fire on his head, and the Lord will reward you. The point is, if you're generous to people and they are generous back, God will notice. Well, Paul cites this proverb in Romans chapter 12, verse 20. Verse 7 of chapter 26. Like a lame man's legs, which hang useless, is a proverb in the mouth of fools. So what's it saying?
The fool's not paying any attention to the proverb.
The fool doesn't even know what he's saying, so it doesn't have any effect. It doesn't move him. It's like, so like a lame man can't walk, so a fool speaking a proverb does not have any impact. Two of my favorites. Verse 11, like a dog that returns to his vomit. Oh, come on. Dinner's been 2 hours ago. Like a dog that returns to his vomit is a fool that repeats his folly. What's the truth there? First, what do dogs and cats sometimes do? They regurgitate their food and they eat it again. Okay? You had a cat growing up. So in the middle of the night you get up and you step on the bathroom. In the morning it'd be gone. But Mom, I swear there was. Okay, so like a pet will sometimes vomit and then can't help itself but eat the food again. So is a fool who's in a circuit of repeating the same folly. And then verse 14. As a door turns on its hinges, so does a sluggard on his bed.
Who makes these things?
Experience teaches. A door opens, closes, opens, closes, opens, closes, but doesn't go anywhere, does it? It stays in place. It swings, but stays in place. And a lazy man just turns in bed and turns in bed and turns in bed and doesn't get up and do anything. All right. I kind of have to beat this to death here. Chapter 30 is the sayings of Agur. Again, I just point that out to you because it's a very short section. But again, when the book started out, the wisdom of the Proverbs of Solomon, it's really, again, a collection of collections. Look at verse 7. Chapter 30, verse 7. It's a lovely little prayer. And it's typical of wisdom. 2 things I ask of you, deny them not to me before I die. Remove far from me falsehood and lying. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food that is needful for me, lest I be full and deny thee and say, who is the Lord? Or lest I be poor and steal and profane the name of my God. The wisdom tradition believes that walking in the middle of the road is the place to be. Don't be on one extreme. Don't be on the other extreme. Walk in the middle. And so similarly, it says, don't make me too rich or too poor. If I'm too poor, I'm going to be angry. If I'm too rich, I'm going to become smug. So give me just enough. Have me walk in the middle. Then verse 15 begins a sub-collection called numerical sayings. And they're all little proverbs about the numbers. Look at verse 15. The leech has 2 daughters. Give, they cry. There are people who are never have enough. Okay? Give, they cry. 3 things are never satisfied. 4 never say enough. Sheol, the barren womb, the earth ever thirsty for water on a rainy day, and the fire which never says enough. You see, they bring together things that have one element in common. They're never satisfied. Fire continues to burn. The parched land continues to cry out. The womb that's empty, that seeks a child. The parents, woman who seeks that child. And Sheol, which is, of course, the place of the dead. Never is full. I didn't say these were happy, I just said these are words of wisdom. Verse 18. 3 things are too wonderful for me, 4 I do not understand. The way of an eagle in the sky, the way of a serpent on a rock, the way of a ship on the high seas, and the way of a man with a maiden. People in love are crazy. Can't be understood. Like a bird in the sky, like a serpent on a rock, like a ship on the sea that can go anywhere it wants. Very varied in their direction. Look at verse 24. Here, I'll give you the answer already. Small things that are powerful. Okay? 4 things on earth are small, but they are exceedingly wise. The ants are a people not strong, yet they provide their food in the summer. The badgers are a people not mighty, yet they make their homes in rocks. The locusts have no king, yet all of them march in rank. The lizard you can take in your hands, yet it is also in kings' palaces. Okay, so again, I told you that this whole creation bit, this is an example of wisdom writers reflecting on creatures and wondering about them. Lizards are they can be everywhere, huh? And locusts, they seem to have a mind when they travel to a region to devour it. And ants and all that. Okay, so that's that. Sayings of Lemuel, chapter 31, very short. Just read a couple. Let's read the first verse, because here's finally a woman has a voice here. The words of Lemuel, king of Massa, which his mother taught him. Now remember, it's king though, so it's like it's court. It combines what Mama always used to say, and you learn wisdom in the court. Look at verse 3. Now, this is from his mother, presumably. Give not your strength to women, your ways to those who destroy kings. It is not for kings, O Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, or for rulers who desire strong drink. Again, warnings against drinking too much and the dangers of flirtations with women. Then, finally, comes a poem. It's an acrostic. What's an acrostic again? 22 lines usually, or some repetition, or some, what I'm trying to say, it's 22 or divisible by 22. Why? There are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. And an acrostic, a full acrostic, every letter, so A, the first verse is Aleph, second verse is Beth, okay? So multiples of 22, or 22. And this is a poem about a woman. Now, it comes around in the lectionary, but you know, this is something to be careful about. I should have brought the lectionary, because the lectionary was put together pretty much by men. And it's reflected in how it's read on Sundays. I can't think of the day. I can look it up in the lectionary here. By what verses you cut out, and by what verses you leave in. The whole poem gives a very different impression than the verses that we read when this passage comes up in the lectionary. Sorry. It tends, I will look it up and send it to you in an email. It tends to, the lectionary cuts and pastes and tends to emphasize the woman's, how she's sweet and honest and good, and her husband is lucky to have her. But if you read the text, she's also clever and productive and takes care of the poor. I mean, she's not a passive character. She's a very active character. Now, was it an accident that the editors of the lecture, I mean, it's too long, I get that, but was it an intentional thing, or was it an accidental thing, which doesn't speak well for the editor? But let's read some of this, and you'll see how active this woman is. A good wife, who can find? She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. Verse 13. She seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. She is like the ships of the merchant. No, she's no sluggard, is she? She is the example of wisdom. Now, we talked about chokmah, woman being feminine. She is the personification of a person living this wisdom life. That's why I think this poem has attached to the collection, because she's received all of this and is living it out. Okay? So again, verse 15. She rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and tasks for her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. So she's a property owner, which wasn't really often the case in Judaism. Okay? With the fruit of her hands, she plants a vineyard. She girds her loins with strength and makes her arms strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. I mean, she's up all night working. Verse 20. She opens her hand to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. She's a provider. Verse 23. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. Remember the city gates I talked about earlier is where the old farts hang around. Okay? And she's married to a man of importance. And she, of course, has helped make him important. Verse 24. She makes linen garments and sells them. She delivers girdles. That's why we have to have translation changes. Girdle means one thing to us. That's not what they mean by it. They would say belt. Belt, huh? She makes linen garments and sells them. She delivers belts to the merchant. She's a leather worker then, in other words. Strength and dignity are her clothing. Strength and dignity are her clothing. She's not frou-frou-y into all kinds of sequin gowns and stuff like that. And she laughs at the time to come. She's not afraid about tomorrow, what tomorrow will bring. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. Now notice, up to this point, all the verses have been third person descriptors. And now the voice turns to her and says in second person, many women have done excellently, you surpass them all. And here comes the big conclusion. Charm is deceitful, beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Get it? Fear of the Lord again, huh? Now that started the collection and ends it. Give her the fruit of her hands, let her works praise her in the gates. So what they're saying here is, again, read that, verse 30. A woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. In a sense, her service at home is worship and deserves to be applauded. What do we call this woman? Various translations call her different things. What do your translations call her?
Busybody.
Busybody?
Yeah.
Oh, shush. You can beat Uni up during recess too.
She makes me tired.
What is the, yeah, but she's making you look bad. That's what you're trying to say. I get it now. Yeah. But what is the text, what do your texts call her? What's the title on the chapter? The ideal wife? Wow, let's analyze this. The ideal wife. Now, what does that say? That, again, that this is all about men.
Yeah.
Really, that's clever and curious.
They
What else
made
did
it
say?
up. They made it up.
Huh? A woman of worth. That's probably a newer translation. The wife of noble character. Well, one that I'm famous of, in Hebrew, a mighty man, a gabor is a mighty man. And so some Jewish translations will call her the mighty woman, or a mighty woman. Comparing where a mighty man's a warrior and blah, 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 she is showing her wealth and her power, and her strength in how she takes care of her family, takes care of the poor, she's resourceful, she's not a slacker, and she makes Uni feel like she needs more work.
Isn't she like a Martha?
She's a Martha. Oh, yeah, she's a Martha. Yeah, yes. So, again, I read a lot of Proverbs at you or with you, but just to give you a flavor. Now, so again, from chapter 10 on, this is the meat of wisdom, where this was just kind of preparation. You should get excited about wisdom. Who has a question or a reaction?
So this is written by men.
Probably.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that women didn't have a hand in it, and women surely had a hand in repeating it and passing it down. But this last passage, I couldn't tell you. Okay.
Yeah.
But again, remember the earlier comment. What's the source? Sociologically speaking, where does wisdom get formed? Well, I think there's three possibilities. It gets formed in the home. Remember, I asked you, what did Mama always used to say? And Mama always got it from her mama, didn't she? Probably, huh? What did Mama always say? That's one possibility. It comes from the home, or it comes from the court. You can see where, again, these young men in this imaginary classroom are being prepared to be bureaucrats, governors, and citizens of the nation, upper class citizens. And so the king and the court, and there were a few proverbs about what those in charge need to be. And there's the religious aspect that's to some degree. Remember the justice issues here about if you give to the poor, and if you don't give to the poor, and God's the law of retribution is going to affect you. So the temple, the priest is also seen as a fount of these traditions. And now, obviously, there weren't a lot of women involved in the temple. There probably weren't a lot of women involved in the place of the court. Could have been some, but it's in the home that the woman rules. And so, it's hard to know. Yes, I'll acknowledge that the text, the totality of it is skewed towards men. Mm-hmm. It's a man's world after all. But don't doubt that it's not women who are the ones who pass this down. And ergo, why Chokmah and Sophia are, and chapter 8 here of Proverbs, wisdom is seen as a feminine aspect.
But see, if this is a woman, idolize the woman, we could say same thing to idolize man if you change it here and there.
You could, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
So my question is then, just it's there. We're supposed to imitate or try
Every
to do-
day, every morning, you should pray this through and say, God, make me this woman.
And she'd have to go back to bed
Oh,
because
wow.
it tired her out.
And go back to bed, yeah, then go back to bed. No, what I see it as is, it's a rare moment when the generally, male-dominated Old Testament gives a spot for the strength of women, and particularly in the tradition of wisdom as the embodiment of wisdom.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes?
It was really striking when you pointed it out that many other women near the end, many other women have proven worse, but you have excelled them all. When it points directly at a woman.
At one woman.
It makes it even more
Yeah.
glaring.
Of what?
And unusual.
Glittering of what?
Well, that this is about women and two women, and who is this you?
Well, again, it could be a specific woman that maybe, in Judaism today, this is a wedding poem, and this men sing this to their wives, huh? But it's also addressing, remember, it's in the book of Proverbs. It's about wisdom herself. It's about wisdom herself. Again, and it's about my mother or my wife or my daughter who has embodied all of this too. So it's all of that. It's all of that.
So this woman also have quite a bit of a masculine side.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, she does. She's not. That's why I will send you the citation from the lectionary. You're gonna go, oh my gosh, it's a pale imitation. All the stuff of her being like buying and selling and
Yes.
is gone. It's like, what were they thinking? Are they trying to, again, the lectionary was cut and pasted in the early 60s, late 50s, and was it somebody trying to say women's places in the house? I don't know. I don't really know. But I'll send it to you, not to put your nose in it, but just to say, to pay attention. It's not just the text. It's who cuts and pastes the text together. That makes a difference.
Yeah.
Do they ever change the lectionary again? Is
Well, they
that
will.
optional?
Write the Pope.
I'll put it on my list.
Yes.
One conflict I have a little bit in it is that it seems to praise restraint, but all of it, but.
The whole book.
To me it does.
Yes, it does. Restraint is a powerful image.
Also, I've heard spare the rod, spoil the child,
Yes.
just constantly used as a reason for abuse.
Yes. Well, it's not meant for abuse, but abusers will use that line as a defense.
They draw it.
Yeah.
So, again,
But again, remember the earlier proverb: raise up a child in the way of wisdom, and they will go that way. It's the same thing. So again, don't be. I don't. Yes, in that culture, were children reprimanded with a cuff? Yeah. Were they beaten? I suspect. I'm not trying to endorse that, but I'm just saying, the bigger tradition is we have truth. How do we hand it on? And there's nothing worse than having a child who is embarrassing, who is a fool, who is a ne'er-do-well. We suffer in silence. The ancients would have said, this is crap. And that would reflect on you. They'd say, oh, you were a bad parent. Again, remember, those of you who are old enough, when all the adults used to be on the same team, the bus driver, the school teacher, the storekeeper, my mother, all adults were on the same team, and the children were on the other team. That's changed now. And again, I'm not trying to say beat your child. That's a good thing. But this culture reflects that sense of children again, I'm sure for people who are children who grow up not have been treated well by a strict hand, see this and must weep because they see their own story. You know, again, children should be seen and not heard. Now, that's not biblical, exactly, but it's that same mentality. You know, because again, that's how it was. Adults mattered. Children, not so much. They loved their children, but if you had 5 babies, only 2 of them would live to adulthood. So they didn't, they dealt with them a little differently than we did. And yes, and they and again, and to have a child grow up to be a criminal or the town loser was a great shame. That's just a horror for them in this culture. Okay, we'll take a break. First, thank you for thinking this through and not just, but again, I think wisdom, once you get into it, it's fascinating. It's a reflection on many levels. It's food for us. It's also a reflection about ancient culture. I love this idea, again, that creation teaches us wisdom, and that the whole of humanity is being addressed by God through creation and nature. And I think that makes wisdom a wonderful addition as we make our way through the Bible. We'll take a break and then back to a small group.